done all you can, and it seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when your friends turn away and you're all alone, alone? Tell me, what do you give when you're giving your all, and seems like you can't make it through? Well, you just stand, but when there's nothing left to do, you just stand, watch the Lord see you through. Yes, after you've done all you can, you just stand. Tell me, how do you handle the guilt of your past? Tell me, how do you deal with the shame? And how can you smile while your heart has been broken and filled with pain, filled with pain? Tell me, what do you give when you're giving your all? Yeah. Seems like you can't make it through. Child, you just stand when there's nothing left to do. You just stand, watch the Lord see you through. Yes, after you've done all you can, you just stand and be sure you're not entangled in that bondage again. You just stand and be sure God has a purpose. Yes, God has a plan. Tell me, what do you do when you've done all you can, and it seems like you can't make it through? Child, you just stand. You just stand. Stand. Don't you dare give up. Through the storm, stand through the rain, through the hurt, jump through the pain. Don't you bow, and don't you bend. Don't give up. No, don't give in. Hold on. Hey, just be strong. God will step in. It won't be long, no. After you've done all you can. After you've done all you can. After you've gone through the hurt. After you've gone through the pain, oh my. After you've gone through the storms, hallelujah. Hey, after you've gone through the rain. Prayed and cried, prayed and cried, prayed and cried, prayed and cried, oh my. After you've done all you can, you just stand.
Well, welcome back. If you have your Bible, I want to invite you to turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 10. We've been in there a few sermons now, and we're going to pick it up where we left off last time. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 10, of course, Koheleth is dealing with, or he's talking about fools and wise, and really you could say he's talking about that all the way through the book. But we're going to look at it here, and he has something I think is fairly interesting or intriguing as he comes to the end of chapter 10. In verse 16, he says this, and we're going to look at verses 16 through 20. Verse 16, he says this: "Woe to you, O land, whose king is a lad, and whose princes feast in the morning." Now, first of all, I want to say this. As we've been going through the book of Ecclesiastes, one of the things that we have not seen is the word woe. If you remember in the Gospels, Jesus says woe to a number of different cities, and we understand that when Jesus says woe, that means that something is about to happen, that one needs to take a careful attention, that one needs to change their ways. Here, Koheleth uses the word woe as well, and he says woe, basically this land who as this type of leader, this type of king, will find themselves in trouble. And what is this type of leader? The type of leader is the individual who is a lad. Now I want to say here, probably some of your other translations say something a little different. And lad here does not mean that it is a young person necessarily. What it means is that it is an immature individual. Woe to the land who has an immature king in power. Now we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So woe is the individual woe is the land who has a king who is immature and also whose princes feast in the morning. That means this individual's cabinet is somebody who feasts, or these individuals feast in the morning. So what is Koheleth talking about? What Koheleth is talking about is that you have somehow inherited a king. And so, of course, back in that day, of course, kings were put into power, put into power because they were born into power. But even us in the United States, we could say, well, woe is our country if somehow we vote an immature person to become president, and that immature person chooses a cabinet with individuals who do not take care of business. The whole picture there is these princes, these individuals who feast in the morning, means that instead of doing their work, instead of looking out for the land, instead of being disciplined and making sure that things are being orchestrated accordingly or appropriately, they are feeding their face. They don't really care about the land. And because the king is immature, he doesn't do anything about it, and he probably doesn't even know what to do about it. And if he does something about it, it's probably the wrong thing. He says, woe to that particular land. Now, I want to say this, right? Because it's so easy. I was thinking about this. I said, well, maybe I can give an example. Maybe I can give an illustration of an individual, but I'm not going to do that because in our politically divided country right now, if I give an illustration of somebody who is Republican, I'll have all the Democratic people mad. I'll have all the Republican people mad at me. Let me make sure I get this right now. If I make an example of somebody who is Republican, I'll have all the Republicans mad at me. If I make an example of somebody who is in power who is a Democrat, I'll have all the Democrats mad with me. If I do somebody who is like a president, man, I'll have so many people mad at me. If I do somebody who is a governor or a mayor, I can't win with giving an example. So this is what I'm going to say. This is just what I'm going to say, because this is probably the way you think about it anyway. Just think of an individual who is in power, who is immature, and their cabinet seems to be individuals who only care about themselves. Koheleth says, woe to the land, woe to the city, woe to the county, woe to the state, woe to the country who has that type of leadership. I just want to say this on the side. That is why we as believers in Jesus Christ should not put our trust in anybody who is in political office. And that doesn't mean that we don't vote for them. That doesn't mean we don't pray for them. That does not mean we don't support them. But we should not put our trust in these individuals or a political party. And so he says, woe to that land. Now, on the other hand, here's a good thing in verse 17. He says, blessed are you, O land, whose king is of nobility, and whose princes eat at the appropriate time. They eat at the appropriate time. Now, I didn't finish the verse, so I'm going to come back to it. But he says a king of nobility. Now, normally what we would think is that, oh, well, this must be somebody who is born through the king lineage. But also, if we go back to verse 16, that individual was also born of kingly lineage. So that's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about is an individual who carries themselves with dignity. Somebody who can self-manage themselves. Somebody who is wise. Somebody who understands the gravity of their decisions, and they make wise decisions in the midst of wise counsel. Because they're princes, these individuals, they eat, he says, at the appropriate time. They are not feasting during the day when they should be working. The appropriate time is in the evening once all their work is done. But I want to finish the verse here, right? I want to finish the verse. So let me read it again. Blessed are you, O land, whose king is of nobility, and whose princes eat at the appropriate time. Why? For strength and not for drunkenness. They eat at the right time, and they eat for the right reason. They eat so that they might have strength to be able to govern, not for the purpose of getting drunk. See, if you go back to verse 16, these individuals who were feasting during the day, not only were they feasting during the day, but they were also getting drunk. And when you're drunk, you can't make wise decisions. But the king of nobility, the one who carries himself correctly and is wise and is disciplined and can manage their own self, has a cabinet who understands the gravity of their position, and they eat at the right time for the right reasons. You know what that shows? That shows self-management. Shows self-management, that they understand what they need to do for themselves to be able to govern over other people. You ever seen individuals who seem to have no self-management whatsoever? See, self-management, I tell you, that is a discipline. If you remember Romans 7, right? So the Apostle Paul is talking about his battle with sin, and sometimes, you know, he does the things that he doesn't want to do in his mind or whatever. And so it's this battle. Self-management takes a battle. It is a discipline that we need to do. And if we can self-manage ourselves, then we are better prepared to be able to manage those who are up under us. You know, I was thinking about this a number of years ago. Some of you know, I usually would get invited a couple times during the football season to do chapel for at least one, maybe two of the NFL teams that were coming into town. And I remember the one year I was able to do the chapel for the Chicago Bears. And during that time, Lovie Smith was the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And I remember that he was in chapel, and it was nice to meet him and to shake his hand and the whole thing. But you know what? I remember something about the Chicago Bears. I've had the opportunity to do chapel for a number of different teams, but I remember the Chicago Bears for a reason. Now, if you remember correctly, Lovie Smith took the Chicago Bears all the way to the Super Bowl, where they ended up losing to Tony Dungy. It was one of those remarkable times where you had two African-American head coaches coaching teams in the Super Bowl, and of course somebody had to win and somebody had to lose. Lovie Smith ended up losing, but he was able to take the Bears all the way there. And I remember that chapel because one thing I noticed about them is that they were very disciplined. And when I look at Lovie Smith, he is a very self-disciplined individual as well. It reminds me here of what Koheleth is saying. He is saying that the individual who is king, who is in authority, authority, the one who is ruling. This individual has to be somebody who carries themselves well, who understands the gravity of their position. They are of nobility, and the princes, their cabinet, the people who are working with them also understand how to manage their own affairs. Boy, wouldn't we be in such a good place? You know, I just think about that, man. As I think about all of the political strife that we're dealing with right now in our country, wouldn't it be great if in both parties there were people of nobility that could manage their own affairs, and also because they could also manage the affairs of our nation. Well, I'm not going to go down there too much because I want to continue here in this passage. So verse 18, he continues on. In verse 18, he kind of gives a general idea, a general principle here, right? He's talked about the poor king, he's talked about the wise king, and now he's giving us a principle. So here it is in verse 18. He says, through indolence, the rafters sag, and through slackness, the house leaks. So he is building upon what he just talked about, the immature king in verse 16. Here's the deal. The indolent person does not take care of business. This individual, the indolent person, the slack person, is about all self-indulgent. They care about themselves and nobody else for the most part. They don't take care of the house, man. The house, the rafters are bending, the roof is leaking, but they don't care because it's all about themselves. Now I want to say this right here. This does not mean that they do not have money. It's not they do not have money. They got money. They just aren't spending their money on the right things. They aren't taking care of the things that need to be taken care of. Why? Because they are not disciplined. They are only taking care of themselves. And so we always need to be on the lookout. So understand this, right? So the word there in verse 16, once again, the lad or the immature, right? They haven't matured yet. You can understand that because sometimes it takes a while for people to understand that. Any parent understands that, right? You got kids, they understand they need to do the chores, they need to cut the grass, they need to shovel the snow, and of course as a kid you're thinking, man, well, I got to do that, man. You know, you just bringing me down. But you teach them that because they have to understand that there are certain things that need to be done, even though they might not be pleasant. They need to be done. But the immature person, just like the lad, has never come to that realization. You know, I used to have I think I told you, I used to have a 69 Camaro. It was all show and no go, as they said. You know, it looked like it could run. But of course, you know, I'm not racing that thing because I really didn't have the engine in that. But you know, I had this thing in college. And so, you know, my dad and others used to tell me, man, you know, you got to put some oil. You got to put some oil in that engine. And I used to hear them say I need to put oil in that engine. Matter of fact, they told me, hey, every 6,000 miles, you need to put oil, you need to get an oil change, and you need to check that engine, and you know, maybe once a week, you need to just check where the oil is because it's an old car with an old engine. Well, I heard it. I heard it, but I didn't listen, or maybe I listened, but I didn't really hear. I don't know how that goes, but all I know is one night I decided to drive back to college. I was going to Michigan State. I was at home for the weekend, and I decided I'm going to go back to Michigan State, and it was nighttime, it was dark, and it was in the wintertime, it was cold, and I had not checked my oil in a while. And anyway, I got past Brighton down I-96 going west towards East Lansing, and you know, I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty nice drive. I'm on my way listening to the radio. All of a sudden, I hear some clink, 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 clink. You know, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know what that is, but I'll deal with it when I get back to campus. Well, I get past Brighton, and then I get past Pinckney. All of a sudden, I see smoke coming up out the engine. Now, you know, now I'm thinking, well, maybe the radiator went bad, but no, this is not steam. This is smoke. And all of a sudden, I start losing power in my car. Do you know that my engine seized up on I-96? I had to call my parents. My dad had to drive all the way from Detroit to come get me to leave that Camaro on the side of the road. That's what immaturity will do for you. You know, experience teaches you, man, never going to do that again, never going to do that again, right? And he said, but the immature individual who is put in leadership, who does not know what to do, is going to ruin the land. And hopefully as we grow older, we have more experiences, we start to learn that we need to do that type of discipline. We need to make sure that the rafters are level. We need to make sure that the roof doesn't leak. But the immature individual does not know that. He continues on here because I want to say, so he explains the lazy person's philosophy of life, right? So the lazy person's philosophy of life in verse 19. He says, men prepare a meal for enjoyment, and wine makes life merry, and money is the answer to everything. Let me repeat the lazy man's philosophy, the immature person's philosophy, the lad's philosophy. Let me repeat it again right here in verse 19. Men prepare a meal for enjoyment, and wine makes life merry, and money is the answer to everything. Don't that sound familiar? Y'all know some brothers like that. You know some brothers and sisters just like that, right? So meal, man, it is about eating good. I want the finest of everything. I go to the restaurant, the waitress don't treat me right, the waiter don't treat me right, I don't leave them no tip. I want the finest of everything. And oh man, I want the top of the line wine. I want the wine that, man, is smooth, been aged for years. I just want to experience this good smelling, good tasting wine. All money, man. It's all about money. It's all about the more money I make and the more money I spend to be able to enjoy life. But at the same time, while you're spending all of this money and engaging in all of this feasting and enjoying yourself, man, your house is leaking. Your house is leaking. Your rafters are sagging. Your sidewalk is broken. Your car engine is locking up. And he says this is the philosophy of the immature lad, the immature person, the immature individual who does not understand discipline in their life. I think once again, that's why us as parents, man, we try to teach discipline to our kids, because if not, they become spoiled and they have this philosophy of life. They have no rainy day fund, because why should I set money aside in a savings account for the rainy day when I can just spend it and enjoy it, and I just believe it's always going to keep coming. It's funny. I believe that the casinos operate on this philosophy. No, don't get me wrong. I don't think they believe in this, but they know that there's folks out there that believe in this philosophy. Now, I know all of a sudden you say, Pastor, you meddling now, you know what I mean? You know I like to go to a good casino every now and then, but you know I don't really gamble with anything. But yeah, I'm trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just getting to the point here. The point is the casinos understand that. I don't know how many people, Christians I know, I don't know how many Christians I know say, well, you know, always explain to the pastor. Yeah, they always explain to the, why do they always explain this to the pastor? I ain't asked, you know, well, pastor, you know what, I go to a casino every now and then, but you know, they got good food. They got good food. You know, I eat it all the time. Yeah, you know, I don't really gamble, but you know, they got good food. You know what I mean? Casinos understand how individuals think. They got the good food, they got the good drink, and they promise you the opportunity to win all this money. You know, I'm amazed. I'm amazed. Now, even Burger King they got into it, right? I watched some of these Burger King commercials, and they got the one with the Burger King with the, you know, the head, the king there, and they got $1 bills flying, you know, making it rain. It's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins, right? It's all about the money. It's all about the money. And the casinos understand that. You know, my wife and I know a couple people, they like to frequent the casinos. And, you know, I know some of y'all like, come on, Pastor, get off the casino thing. But I'm going to take this all the way through. We know some people who like the casinos, man. And, you know, they always say, well, you know, we won $300. Yo, we went down there, oh, man, we won $300. But what they forget to tell us, because we know, but you spent $500. You spent $500, you hit a jackpot, you got $300, and you brag about the $300, but you lost $200. See, that is what Koheleth is talking about. The casinos understand this, and why all the time too? When the casinos when they advertise this, they always put down real close. Well, if you have a gambling problem, make sure you call this number, whatever, right? But they know that these individuals are out there. These are the lads, and boy, when a lad or immature person gets in the power, oh, woe is that land. Let me tell you something, right? Before I go to verse 20, I just want to hit this for a minute. Have you thought about how much debt we as a country are in? Have you ever stopped and looked at how much debt? Trillions of dollars. And it makes me wonder, man, I don't care Republican or Democrat, how many of these individuals that we have voted into office fit the description that Koheleth is talking about. Well, how does he respond to us? Let me tell you something. This is what Koheleth has to say to us who hopefully are trying to live wisely and are up under the leadership of the immature. What does Koheleth, what word did he have for us who are trying to live prudently, but we have the immature who are in power over us? This is what he would say to us. Verse 20. He says, furthermore, in your bedchamber, do not curse a king. And in your sleeping rooms, do not curse a rich man. For a bird of the heavens will carry the sound, and the winged creature will make the matter known. What Koheleth is saying to us is be careful what you say about those immature lads who are over you. Be careful about your bad boss that's over you. Be careful about that individual who is in power over you, even though they are foolish. Be careful what you say, because you think that you are saying something about them implied negatively, and you think that what you're saying is safe. It's a problem, right? It's a problem. You tell your partner, and you tell your partner not to tell anybody, hey man, I'm telling you this in confidence, and they say, okay man, cool, I got it, yep, you can count on me. And then they go out and they tell their partner and say, hey man, you gotta keep this on the QT, man. You know, it's just, you know, because it'll get me in trouble if you go and tell, you know, so make sure. And they say, oh man, you got it. I'm gonna keep it quiet. And then they go and they tell somebody else, and eventually it gets to somebody who got a blinder mouth. And next thing you know, it's all on social media. Everybody knows what the deal is. And now that king, that boss, that person who is over you now is looking for you because you badmouthed them behind their back. Coelho says, hey, you better keep it to yourself. No matter how you feel about that individual, you need to zip it. Reminds me when we were over in Uganda. You know, I had the opportunity, of course, a number of times to go over to Uganda and do mission work, and it was kind of cool. But I remember this one time we were actually in a boat going down the Kazinga Channel in Uganda, and Kazinga Channel is the riverway that is between Lake Edward and Lake Edward and Lake George. And the river or the channel is absolutely amazing. Because on this channel, you used to ever see those things on a Discovery Channel or Nat Geo. I mean, this is it, man. You got these elephants that are massive that come down to the channel to drink water. You got these Cape buffalo, and you would think of them as water buffalo. You got these Cape buffalo that are there that are vying for position as well. You got crocodiles, man, that are in the water. I mean, these things are vicious. You do not want to mess with them. And then you got the hippos, man. These hippos, you know, we got hungry hippo, and you know, Barney, the purple hippo. Let me tell you something. These hippos kill more people than any other wild animal. They are up under the water, and they come up and they will tip over a boat. And you got hippos, man, and it is just, I mean, it is literally wild. And so, you know, you're concerned about all these animals, and you're looking at them and stuff, and you're praying that the hippos stay cool and calm and a whole different thing. So we out there and we going down the channel, and man, all of a sudden, this hawk comes barreling down from the sky, and it spreads its wings, and then it spreads out its talons, and it goes into the water and comes out and grabs this fish. This fish had to be about 1.5 feet. Unbelievable, just come down and grab it. And so Pastor Slater, you know, I went with Pastor Slater. His brother has one of those fast action cameras. And so he was able to actually, he saw it coming, he was actually got pictures of it. It is absolutely amazing. And I was thinking about this. That fish didn't know anybody saw him. It was swimming, thinking it was in secret, and all of a sudden a bird from heaven came down, spread its wings, extended its talons into the water, and grabbed it for all of us to see. Coelho says, hey, let me tell you something. When you are up under a foolish boss, an immature leader, be careful what you say and who you say it to. Because when you are least expecting it, a bird from heaven will come and make your words known. You know, I was thinking about that this week as I was preparing this passage. I was thinking about there was a couple of times I was thinking about saying something to somebody about something that I disapproved of, and I thought, you know, Koheleth's words are true. Shut it up. Just talk to the Lord about it. Lord, you see what's going on. You see the injustice. You see that things are not right. And I would rather share it with the God of heaven than to allow a bird of heaven to make my words known. You know, it's an interesting passage here, Koheleth. He closes out chapter 10. And I just think, brothers and sisters, as we live in this confused world, with leadership that is immature and makes self-centered decisions and doesn't have our best interests at heart, is all about consuming themselves. Let's be wise with our words, especially those of us who are believers in Jesus Christ. Let our words be seasoned with salt. Let us be light in the midst of darkness. Let our light so shine that people glorify our Father in heaven and not get caught up in the fray of foolishness of our culture. If Koheleth was here, he would say, let our yes be yes and our no be no. Let our words be seasoned with salt, so that our Heavenly Father may get glory in all that we say. Father God, we come to you right now, and Koheleth has been talking about the foolish and the wise all through this chapter. And he ends it with the immature lad, the immature person in leadership over us. And even though we may be critical and want to tear the individual down, you tell us that we should be wise in our speech. Help us, Lord, that our life may give you glory and our words might give you praise, and people would hear and see us and give all the praise and glory to you. Bless us now, we ask, in Jesus' name. Amen.
You're a perfect man. Got the whole world in your hands, but you still reaching out for me. Ooh, wow, why you love me too? I'm nothing like you. Opposite of holiness was what I was, but until you see my soul and couldn't see why. Held my head high, cause you see I see you see me. Oh, one stop, cause you keep me. And now I'm better and better. No longer what I used to be better. Stronger, yeah, yeah. Christ is in my life, oh yeah, I'm good, yeah. Christ is in my life, oh yeah, I'm good, yeah. I'm good, 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 I'm good. Hey yo, he said that he will never never changed. He remains the same every single day. Yesterday's the day I let him hold my hand, and I follow all his plans. Sometimes I don't understand, but to trust is what I can do. Cause he made me new, and he made me too. Things I used to do that I shouldn't do, all of them he took. Now I lift my eyes to the sky like it's 4th of July. So I'm good, even live my life for the Adonai. Yeah. I'm good, 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 I'm good. Hush, these take my life fine, I'm through my soul, so this love has made me perfect. I'm a picture of the stars and it's true. It's true. I'm scared of the changing, it's making me better. He's only the new thing, it's making me stronger, yeah, yeah. That's to see my life for him, yeah. That's to see my life for him, yeah.